Hello and welcome to this. We are in round 7 at Grand Prix Sao Paulo, and we have Macon Guimarães against Carolina Annette. You mentioned that Carolina, very much an aficionado of these red decks. A local player?
Yeah, she writes for the Portuguese website, Liga Magic, and I know she's been advocating burn strategies for years in every format. That's very much her thing, what she likes to do. She has fun doing that, and she's been pretty successful today. I know she knows the deck and send that out. She has very good sideboard plans. We can see her deck list here, some very interesting choices, and I want to see what's going to happen here, really. I don't expect this game to last a lot of turns, but I expect every turn to be extremely intense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that from the get-go here, we've got Carolina casting a Lava Spike on turn 1, an untapped Sacred Foundry plus a Rift Bolt. While it does hold off a creature potentially on this second turn, having to play these lands untapped, you really feel the pain in this matchup.
Yeah, so neither player is starting with a turn 1 creature, would be the first step to get ahead in this matchup. Now, Carolina, by suspending that Rift Boat, she may expose herself to Eidolon of Great Revels. She's going to necessarily get a trigger out of it if Mycon plays it first.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that if you're Mycon here, there's a little bit of a tension there, because you don't necessarily want to let your Eidolon die cheaply, because while in play it represents a lot of damage, both attacking him and then also from its trigger. As things stand, Lightning Bolt to the face, Rift Bolt to the face, and Mycon missing his second land is almost certainly going to be lights out in this match.
He's going to be in trouble. He wasn't the draw. He's not going to use his mana as efficiently. Now he's basically counting on Carolina not having enough burn spells in her hand before he can fight his land. Which is kind of likely. He's already at 9 and now going down to 7, and she has 2 cards in hand, and we can see 2 burn spells.
Yeah, Searing Blaze might not have too many targets in this matchup, but with a fetch land in play ready to use, if there is a creature from Mycon here, then it will surely perish, and in the process it will still be damage being dealt to the head as well.
Yeah, so actually if Mycon never draws a creature, Carolina is going to have 1 less burn spell she can play, and maybe that's his out.
Yeah, I mean, on average, the cards in this deck, or the non-land cards, should I say, representing about 3 damage each normally. Anything that can do more, so creatures tend to be particularly premium in this matchup. Anything less, well, that's unfortunate. Lava Spike in this matchup, almost as good as Lightning Bolt, because you kind of want to be sending this to the dome anyway.
Yeah, right. Mycon unfortunately didn't find his second land drop in time. He's now falling down 4. There are some cards in Burn that are able to do 4 damage by themselves. Just another guy? Okay, he's down to 2. Yeah, that's a difficult position.
Finds a land, but it's a land that's going to cost him another point of life. I guess the difference between 2 and 1, almost academic at this point.
Yeah, almost irrelevant. Now, he's going to have to kill the Goblin Guide and just hope Carolina misses for several turns. Just a bit unfortunate from his side how the game's played out. As we said, it was going to be fast. It's going to be brutal, and any enemy stop is going to be lethal.
Yeah, I mean, normally the Burn deck, one of the decks that really punishes opponents' bad draws, and while it could quite happily function on 2 or 3 lands, 1 land really means that it's not able to efficiently deploy all of its threats, and that's exactly the situation that Mycon finds himself in here.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly has more than 12 points of damage in spells in his hand. It's just he's not going to be able to cast in time. It's not over yet, but just in a difficult position.
Yeah, I mean, the draws that Carolina has here in order for this game to go much longer are basically lands.
Basically lands, yeah. Everything else either attacks or deals damage directly to your face. More Searing Blazes as well if Mycon continues to not play creatures.
So there's the Searing Blaze from Mycon. Pretty much the most efficient way of dealing with a creature, killing it off and dealing 3 points of damage straight to Carolina here.
Okay, she's now at 9. He could drop land and play 3 1 mana. Okay, that's it.
Yep, Lightning Helix was a draw that worked. But actually, yeah, you're right. Like, if it had worked out that that had been a land off the top.
Yeah, triple Lightning Bolt.
Yep, that'll do it. As things stand, though, Carolina picking up the first game. These players reaching for their sideboards, and there are some very impactful cards in these sideboards.
Yeah, it's a mirror match through and through. Both players have core firewalkers on the sideboard. That's going to be absolutely critical piece in the mirror match. And they both have Path to Exile if they want to bring it in to deal with opposing core firewalkers. Now, I know Burn players, they're going to have their preferences. Some people, I know they believe that it's not worth to bring in that Path Exile since it only has one target and you're not even sure if your opponent's going to bring in that core Firewalker. Maybe that's something that changes between games 2 and 3 as players see their opponent's deck during this game 2. But other than that, they really have the same options, and Maicon is going to be a little bit ahead and a little bit more favored for game 2 just on the fact that he's only going to play, which means he's got one extra use of his lands.
Now, I guess the keepable hands here, it's kind of interesting because in principle, when you've got such a potent sideboard card, there's a temptation to want to mulligan for it. But equally, Burn is a deck that it really needs every card representing damage, and each card you're throwing away, that's you throwing away damage that you desperately need to find to win the game. I would venture to suggest, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that this is going to be one of those matchups where, assuming that you have 2 land and spells, you kind of have to keep.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've been talking this all day. Every deck has a different approach to mulliganing. I think Burn is a critical mass deck. It really needs to draw a lot of Burn spells, so it gets punished more than other decks that are just looking for a specific card, right? So yeah, 2 lands, 5 spells is going to be a perfect hand for those players. 1 lander's on the draw. Those might be keepable too. It's kind of the choice Maicon made that first game. The fact that he wasn't a draw, he's going to have 1 more draw step to try and find a second land. It didn't work out. But if he did find it, he's going to be just massively ahead just because there's going to be a higher density of spells that he can cast.
Now, do you think that Maicon going into this game already had a little bit of a scent as to what it was that Carolina was up to?
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's a very popular writer in Brazil. Like, everybody knows she likes to play Burn decks. Maicon probably was aware of it for sure.
So, as things stand now, the jig very much up for each of these players in terms of what they're playing. Nothing to hide here as they go into sideboarding. And do you think that sideboarding really changes at all based on the play or the draw, or are the good cards good and the bad cards bad?
Yeah, so maybe Eidolon of Great Revels is the card that's going to have the more variance, depending on whether or not you're on the play or on the draw. But other than that, the cards, look, it's all Burn spells. They're very similar to what they do. But the fact that players on the play, maybe they have a little bit more wiggle room to try to cast a Lightning Helix when the opponent stepped out and he's not going to be able to answer with the Skullcrack. In the games that do go long, which are not common, that kind of interaction is going to decide the mid game.
All right, final shuffling just getting completed here. Hopefully we'll see a reasonable 7 from both of these players, so we get to have, albeit what will almost certainly be a quick game, a game that feels a little bit more like both players are in it than we had in our game 1. Core Firewalker is one of the cards that Carolina draws in her opening 7, drawing them one by one, kind of squeezing them out, and that has to be a keep, surely.
Yeah, looks like a fine hand. It has the best card in the matchup right in her hand. Now, does she have double white colored sauces? It seems to be the case. I see 2 fat lands there. From Maicon, I don't have a good look at his hand. That might be just too many lands.
Yeah, I mean, as much as 1 is too few lands, once this deck has 3 lands in play, it never wants to draw another land for the rest of the game. It's very unlikely that you're going to need to get to 5, 6, 7 mana at any point for any reason, because, I mean, the most expensive spell in your deck costs 2. You don't, while it's nice to be able to go spell, or maybe even 3 spells in a turn, chances are most of those spells cost 1.
Yeah, the third land's already kind of bad. The fourth one is basically useless, and Michael recognizes that. He correctly identified as a hand that he needs to mulligan to have a greater shot of winning this game.
All right, so down to 6. 6 not necessarily the end of the world. If it ends up 5, that could be a big problem.
Yeah, he's still fine. A 6 card with a Goblin Guide on the play. If Carolina doesn't have a removal spell, Macron is still going to be a big favorite in this game.
All right, 6 cards it is.
Provided, of course, he has the answer for a Core Firewalker.
Yes, Core Firewalker, a very important piece of the puzzle. It looks like there's a couple of copies of Skullcrack. They are kind of interesting when you're facing down Core Firewalker, if you think that there's going to be a lot of life gain going on.
Yeah, and Skullcrack prevents... let's check the Oracle test.
Yeah,
damage cannot be prevented this turn. This means that Core Firewalker with protection from red, it still cannot be targeted by a red burn spell, but say it blocks the Goblin Guide, he can cast his Skullcrack and the damage won't be prevented by the Core Firewalker. It's one of the ways to get rid of it in a mirror match.
All right, so turn 1, Sacred Foundry coming down. Is that it coming into play tapped? Well, I mean, very nearly. It's suspending a Rift Bolt, so Maikon going to 18 here. And Bloodstain Mire immediately getting cracked by Carolina here. Sacred Foundries all around.
Yeah, she's working her way through white mana. So from Maikon's perspective, playing that Sacred Foundry untapped is not something that you do necessarily every game. You had to judge it on a game-by-game basis because he's taking 2 to do 3. It's still advantageous, but it's a lot of damage that's taking himself.
All right, well, it's Core Firewalkers all around.
All right.
That's what gets revealed by Goblin Guide. This could be a complicated game too that we have going on here. When both players are gaining life from either player playing a red spell, this is going to be a hot mess.
Going to be a little bit madness. Let's see if Maikon has managed to cast it. Oh, it's Stomping Ground. Means he's too short of the second white source. Maybe that's one of the reasons why he chose not to hit the Goblin Guide with the Rift Boat. He wants the Goblin to keep revealing lands on top of his deck.
Yeah, normally speaking, killing off creatures kind of a good plan just because it means that you have the most consistent damage source from your opponent's deck dealt with. As things stand here, it's not as if Carolina is going to let the fact that it worked out that way stop her from attacking. Reveals Monastery Swift Spear off the top there, so Maikon unlikely to have a white source on this next turn. Meanwhile, speaking of white sources...
So Core Firewalker is extremely powerful card in a mirror match, but it's not free to cast.
Yeah, this is 6 damage that Carolina has elected to take here in order to make sure that she has double white on turn 2.
Yeah, absolutely worth it.
2 free spells.
And she's fortunate you have found double white for it. It's more like from Maiko's side, this deck's not that likely to have double white by turn 2, just by the way the mana source of the deck work.
So in response to that Core Firewalker, the last best opportunity to get some free damage in without any life gain on the other side of things. Carolina drops to 7. Now, the way that Skullcrack interacts with Core Firewalker in terms of if you cast it, the Core Firewalker trigger means that you still gain the 1 life for the Skullcrack being cast.
Right.
It's just that subsequent life
after
gain
that,
above and beyond is not going to happen.
Still, for him to have this multiple burn spells at the same time, he needs to hit land drops.
All right, so Skullcrack in response to Monastery Swift Spear, so that at least the trigger from Core Firewalker on Monastery Swift Spear having been cast won't gain any life.
Okay, that's reasonable. If he has a second Skullcrack, and I think he does, it's fine to fire off the first one here.
I mean, 4 points of life remaining for Carolina. It's not as if this Core Firewalker makes her immune to all damage. Like, she's on relatively low life here. It's entirely possible that even with a few points of life gain here and there, that Maikon will be able to find enough damage here.
Yeah, surprisingly close game.
Surprisingly close. The red deck that elects to take 6 in the first 2 turns is surprisingly low on life. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you played those lands a little bit more carefully and try not to take damage from them, but it really depends on your hand. It's not something that you can judge before the game if it's the right approach or not.
I mean, as things stand, Maikon here, he's had 2 games in a row where land has not been his friend.
Yeah.
No attacks from Carolina that turn, respecting that one of the ways that she could lose here was from some sort of a hasty attack on the other side of things.
Yeah, of course, she saw the Monastery Swift Spear for Michael because the Goblin Guide. It's the secret upside of Goblin Guide. You get to see your opponent's hand.
Yeah, that lantern, it's revealing a few things.
Right.
Oh, wow. If it was the Goblin Guide, he's actually carrying literally the Lantern of Insight. That'd be sweet. Okay, Maikon definitely with some decisions here. 4 points of damage to deal without a third land. This is going to be kind of a mess because if he casts a Skullcrack, that's a net of 2 damage effectively. But that uses all of his mana. He needs to find something better, and ultimately he's going for a Goblin Guide, letting Carolina gain the life there.
Yeah, so that's a play he needs to do just in order to survive. He really wanted to top deck another Skullcrack there, I think. Or lands turn 4.
Yeah, the draws have not worked out especially helpful for Maikon in this second game. Or indeed the first. His lands have not been his friend this entire round here.
Yeah, just very unfortunate for him. That is one of the downsides of the burn deck. You don't have a lot of ways to manipulate your draws. You don't want to draw too many lands because you need a mass of spells. But sometimes, yeah, you're stuck with too few lands.
Well, it looks like Carolina being helpful in that regard. A Path to Exile will mean that Maikon has an additional land. However, on 8 life, he may find that he doesn't actually have any time to use it here.
Yeah, that's a play that she makes if she's going to attack for little.
Lava Spike pre-combat so that the prowess trigger is going to happen on Monastery Swift Spear here. So right now that Monastery Swift Spear has 2 prowess triggers to work off.
Right, so if Carolina has nothing else, Michael can block the Swift Spear and go to 1. But I think she's going to have something else.
It seems
that way, yeah.
Another copy of Lava Spike will be enough to seal things here.
That's game.
Yep.
The Burn Master, Carolina and Ed, taking down the Burn Mirror.
Yeah, made it look easy. As it turns out, when your opponent doesn't ever draw a third land, it is pretty easy.
That's how you get to become a Burn Master.
A little bit of luck, a little bit of skill, ultimately victory. That is enough to take the first match here, and as we prophesied, we are going to have plenty of time to bring you more Magic soon enough.
Good.
Straightforward burn matchup to begin with. I would imagine that we're going to get a little bit of a variety in here. It may even be that we jump across to a match live rather than going to Time Warp, depending on how things are looking for time on our round. But refreshing, a little palate cleanser that we got there in terms of the burn lists that we got to see in action.
Yeah, it's a deck that has had some success at Barcelona. It's always been a staple for Modern format. Players absolutely love to throw burn at opponent's face. Yeah, we got to see a quick win, and now we can move and see other games too. So another upside of that burn mirror match.
Yeah, I kind of like the choice of burn as well when you know that there's a hot new control deck that's just hit things. I'm interested to see how that one plays out over the course of the rest of today and of course the rest of the weekend. But also interested to see what happens in our feature match area. Do not go anywhere. After these messages, we'll have more Magic from this, our round 7 here at Grand Prix Sao Paulo. Hello and welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Sao Paulo. I'm Tim Willoughby, this is Lucas Esparberto, and we're having a wild old time here, showing you all the host of variety that is modern. This is why we love it. So there are so many different decks that can potentially do things rather neatly. We've already had a chance to see a whole host of red spells get cast in our feature match area, and one of the good things about that, of course, is it means that there's plenty more time for us to bring you just a little bit more magic from our feature match area. And we of course have had our cameras up and ready to go since the very start of the round, recording one of our other matches, and that's exactly what we're going to head down to now as we check out more from round 7 here in Grand Prix Sao Paulo. So here we have Marcio Carvalho against Felipe Badaro. Carvalho, number 5th in the world and currently 5 wins to his name here. He started on 3 buys, so 2-1 in terms of the matches that he's actually been able to play thus far. We saw him earlier on. He is on the Young Pyromancer list that was popularized by Jerry Thompson at the last Pro Tour. Very powerful list, a lot of ways of interacting with creature decks, but he finds himself here against a turn 1 Urza's Power Plant into Chromatic Sphere. So this is against Tron. I'm less certain as to how this one plays out than maybe your humans list or something where he can cheaply and easily use some of his removal.
Right, so Marcio usually loves his mid-range decks because it presents a lot of choices that he makes during gameplay and try to outplay his opponent. There's not a whole lot he can do against Tron. Tron is either going to get you or he won't. One of his outs is Blood Moon, which is a card that he could have access to in his 75.
Yeah, I believe he does actually have a couple of copies of that one in his main deck, so if he draws into it at the right moment, he could get something going very quickly. But you know what? The right moment is going to have to be very soon indeed, because there's already 2 pieces of Urzatron in play, along with an Expedition map. So Felipe Badaro, at worst, will have Tron on turn 4, and he could easily just have it here on turn 3 and plop down a card and say thank you, good night.
Yeah, so now Marcio is hoping that Felipe is not going to have a threat to go with Tron. And then he hopes he's going to top deck his Blood Moon, and hopefully that plus the Young Pyromancer is a sufficient enough clock to close out the game. It's a tall order. Yeah,
I mean, I hope that Marcio is able to hold his hand of cards with all those fingers crossed, because that's a lot to ask for. Ultimately, Felipe does have to use the Expedition map to find the final piece of the puzzle there in Urza's Tower on turn 3. But I mean, even now, having done that, he's got access to 3 mana on turn 3. That's all that any of us can normally aspire to. And as things stand, there may still be some sort of a follow-up as he plays that Urza's Tower. Looks like there's an Oblivion Stone in hand. He's got a few options, doesn't want to expose anything just yet, but at some point, very, very soon, that hand full of cards is going to explode onto this table.
Yeah, he chose not to play it, perhaps playing around Kill Against Command, which is the popular card from Mardu Pyromancer's side. Of course, the downside is it gets exposed to its card spell, which is exactly what Marcio has here.
Alright, so now we all get to get a sense of exactly how bad things could be here. 3 copies of Oblivion Stone.
Emrakul, the promised end. That's something you don't see every day.
It really isn't. There's already Artifact in the graveyard. I'm not sure if there's a land there, I can't quite make it out. But Emrakul certainly comes down fast in Tron, and the copies of Oblivion Stone as well will certainly make life fiddly for Marcio. Now, Mindslaver effects, we know that they're good. How good are they against Mardu Pyromancer?
I'm just going to go ahead and assume that they're insane. the amount of damage Marcio can do to himself when Felipe is controlling him is massive. Felipe, with those Oblivion Stones, he can keep resetting the board. He's going to take away the clock from Marcio, and he can potentially play around Blood Moon as well, as long as he keeps the option to activate Oblivion Stone at the end of Marcio's turn instead of doing a stack step.
Yeah, I guess Oblivion Stone kind of great against the likes of Blood Moon. Typically, it's one of the cards that Tron decks have to fear, but with this many copies of the stone, Felipe he can almost be a little bit reckless with it. He can afford to throw one away and know that he's still got a backup plan if need be. Right here, just takes the damage from a Young Pyromancer and a single elemental. And for Marcio, it may be that he's got to thread the needle a little bit in playing just enough threats that that first stone doesn't get popped too soon. Get some damage in where he can. Yeah,
so this turn is going to choose to activate Faithless Looting. Him keeping a healthy graveyard with lots of instant sorceries means he can actually cast Bedlam Revelers in his hand. Though it does seem like he doesn't have anything else to discard Faithless Looting.
Yeah, there's not any value discards here. I guess the second Bedlam Reveler is always going to be a discard because the first one would make you discard it anyway. So that one's a relatively easy choice. It's just what else are you going to throw away?
Yeah, maybe an extra land. I think he really wanted to discard something, some instant or sorcery, just to have accelerate that Bedlam Reveler he does have left in his hand.
Yeah, tricky situation here for the number 5 ranked player in the world in terms of what he's going to be discarding.
Yeah, it's a tricky matchup.
Ends up discarding Liliana of the Veil, signed by Steve Argyle, who is here this weekend. Been signing copies of Liliana up and down the country and indeed all around the world.
I haven't had a chance to be there yet.
Stick it on the list. There's still time. But there's also probably still a queue. He's been very popular all weekend. And his Thoughtseize, some juicy targets, and indeed a Chromatic Sphere. Sorry, Emrakul.
Yeah, so Marcio took away his threat. Now Felipe could potentially be in a situation where he simply doesn't find another Haymaker. And of course, he does have a lot of time because of the Oblivion Stones, but it's not a guarantee that he's going to find a threat. The Turn deck is very good at cycling through his cards, but maybe he just finds a batch of lands there, and Marcio has his out.
All right, so Badaro hoping for something big off the top. He gets another Tron piece, so his mana looking absolutely spectacular. He's going to be able to deploy anything that he draws very, very easily. Cashes in a Chromatic Sphere here to get another chance at a draw, finds another Tron piece.
Okay, that's actually good for Marcio. It's exactly the draws Marcio wants Felipe to have.
Yeah, I mean, this way round, Marcio has time. There are so many other draws that Felipe could have found that would have been much more problematic. If that Thoughtseize hadn't come along, then we could easily have seen an Emrakul that last turn. And Emrakul, in addition to just being a creature big enough to chomp away almost the entirety of Marcio's life total, can also just really mess with any plans that Marcio has of winning games.
Yeah, it's such an interesting choice. It's not a card you see in every Tron deck list. The trend has recently to be playing cards like Ulamog and Vulcan Ballista that, maybe they're a little bit cheaper, maybe they're a little bit more flexible, but yeah, I kind of wanted to see that Emrakul being cast, maybe next game.
Yeah, like, it's definitely one of those ones that I like getting people in Modern with cards that they're not expecting, and it's almost the definition of a card that in this format you're not expecting.
Yep.
So Bedlam Reveler here, not too many useful cards left for Marcio in hand to discard, which means that the Thoughtseize that he picks up from Bedlam Reveler, a strict upgrade. Pyroclasm, the pickup for Badaro here. That one that seems like a prescient main deck choice right here, though it must be said that right now, Bedlam Reveler being the only creature on the battlefield, it doesn't do too terribly much. Marcio going to be working on his prowess this turn, though. Got a few good options. Starting things off with a Thoughtseize.
Yeah, I think Marcio knows he's not going to take anything good with that Thoughtseize, but it's at least one more prowess trigger.
I mean, it's prowess, it's also peace of mind. It cost him 2 life to get that peace of mind, but you know what? At least now he knows that the most that's going to happen for Felipe next turn is that he's going to top deck well, and he gets to feel bad about the top deck rather than feel like he got played. Yeah,
the scariest part of this battlefield is Felipe's top deck of his library.
And that's
another land.
That's what makes Tron so powerful, is the fact that you can go, it doesn't matter how much discard you got, it doesn't matter how much else you got going on. If I find the card that I need on the top of my deck, there's nothing you can do about it.
So Felipe chose not to activate his Oblivion Stone last turn, and now since Marcio has a Lightning Bolt, he chose not to play any extra spells before attack, maybe trying to bait Felipe into not activating his Oblivion Stone one more turn and just take 3. Because, see, imagine he plays the discard spell and it's 4 damage, maybe 4 damage makes Felipe activate the stone, and it's not the play Marcio wants him to make.
All right. Is this going to be a gigantic Walking Ballista? I think it is. I'm not even going to bother doing the math. I'm just going to wait for the die, because you know what?
7.
Also gets to activate Sanctum of Ugin here.
Oh, wow. Yep, okay, so it wasn't likely for Marcio. Now we can see why. That's effectively 2 threats that Felipe drew with that Ballista, since he can activate his Sanctum of Ugin.
Looks like Marcio just double checking the timing on the Sanctum of Ugin there.
Okay, so what's potentially being discussed here is that since Sanctum triggers on cast and the Walking Ballista had the counters being put into it, there's a case to be made that Felipe missed the timing for his trigger.
Looks like that might be the way it plays out. A little tough there for Felipe, but you know what? That is the way that the rules work.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe if he said something while he was casting the Ballista, it would be different. But yeah, I can see Marcia's point here. The judge was there. He saw what was happening. He's going to figure things out.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to see when you're right down there on the floor. There are some instances where it's kind of obvious that the other person has literally forgotten until a little bit too late. Other cases where it's kind of more of a just a communication thing. But you know what? Yeah. The easiest way of getting around it either way is if you communicate everything perfectly clearly, it's very, very difficult to have these kind of issues.
Yeah, so this kind of situation, you just trust the judge that was watching the game. He's going to make the right call for sure.
Now this Walking Ballista, no matter which way you slice it, is kind of a problem for Marcio. It represents 7 damage on the face of things, but on top of that, I mean, there's what, 3, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, I think that's 14 mana available. That's another 3+1/+1 counters that can be put on it next turn if Felipe draws literally nothing. And at that point, 1 attack plus the damage from throwing some counters around, easily enough to finish off Marcio here.
Yeah, so even if Marcio tries to navigate next turn in such a way that Felipe has to throw a lot of the Ballista's counter on the Battle Unraveler, like if the Ballista survives with just 1 counter, Felipe can untap and put more into it. Maybe the best case scenario for Marcio is, say, Felipe blocks and he can finish it off with a Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. I mean, even if there was, even if Marcio had a Terminate immediately, he's still taking a sizable hit to both his life total and his board here.
Yeah, and it's just more time that Felipe is going to get, even if the Ballista dies.
Looks like these guys maybe just appealing that judge ruling. Obviously, quite an important one.
Yeah, of course.
But, you know, play is continuing now. Draw step here for Marcio Carvalho. Finds another Lightning Bolt. That one pretty helpful because right now, Felipe on 8 life, it might be that Marcio can just kind of sidestep everything that's going on with Walking Ballista.
Lightning Bolt, Collective Brutality, that's exactly 8 damage.
Yeah. Let's not worry about this Ballista chap. Even if it worked out that the Sanctum had come along, exactly enough burn for Marcio to take game 1. And we get to go straight into our game 2 here. Marcio picking up a game 1 fairly straightforwardly. He's got a couple of copies of Lingering Souls. He's got a Thoughtseize, but he's only got 1 land to work with here. Decides to go for a mulligan. I think that seems like a good choice. An easy way to lose a game is getting stuck on 1 land.
Yeah, in a matchup that is as difficult as this one, I can see Marcio taking a little bit more risks with the hand he's keep. But that hand, you know, it was too far. Just 1 land with cards that cost 3 mana.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the notion of knowing when to take risks on the hands that you keep. I think that a lot of us, when we're playing, we have these little rules for ourselves about what we keep and what we don't. So, for example, always mulligan a hand with only 1 or 0 lands. That one I think is very common to a lot of us. In my experience, the most adept players, while they might well have rules like that, they also know when it's time to say, I have to break that rule because my only chance of winning is doing something extreme.
Yeah, it's really an underrated skill, like having to adapt your own set of rules game to game based on your opponent. In Marcio, the 6 skip, that's a risk. There's Discard, there's Blood Moon, but there's only 1 land.
So Inquisition of Kozilek here, getting to see exactly what's going on. There is a whole host of things, but not very much that can get taken by this Inquisition. Goes for Ancient Stirrings, no argument there. That is a very powerful card available to this Tron list, and with already a Chromatic Sphere in play, it was going to be one that's going to be able to get cast to potentially still enable a turn 3 Tron. Like that one.
Yeah. So Marcio is in a potentially good position, provided he can find these 2 lands that he needs to cast Blood Moon. Felipe is going to be, as we just saw by his hand, still a few turns away from casting Tron. He's going to need to draw the right cards. It might take him a while to do something really scary.
Now, one of the things that I like about Tron is it has a deceptively large amount of card drawing.
I mean, we're seeing a Sylvan Scrying here that gets to fetch up a land. There's also Expedition Map that's fetching up a land. And then you have these 8 baubles, your 4 chromatic sphere, your 4 chromatic star, that also get to draw a card. And that means that for a mono green deck that is all based around permanents, it's actually rocketing through its deck at a rare old pace.
Yeah, it's very consistent. It's why it's one of the pillars of the format. It's effectively a 52 card deck.
So Thoughtseize here taking out Oblivion Stone, and now we see Thragtusk alongside Ulamog, Chromatic Sphere, and a Tron land there.
Yeah, that one is also, I think, a very interesting decision from Marcio's perspective. He's choosing to take the card that could deal with his Blood Moon instead of potentially a Thragtusk that could be bigger than anything he has, or the late game power of Ulamog.
And that Thragtusk is definitely castable. There's already the Forest in play.
Yeah, it's a thing Philippe is going to have an access to it no matter what. I think Marcio made the right call there, but it's too good to think through his options.
So Felipe here pretty aggressively digging through his deck with these spheres. 2 out of 3 on his Tron pieces. That's a power plant and a mine there for those of you counting at home. So still needs to know his tower.
And Marcio found his 3rd land. Exactly what he needed there.
Yeah, and now that he's got those 3 lands, this is kind of when it all works out. You keep a 1-land hand and then you draw the lands that you need. The proportion of your cards that are spells is pretty high.
And he's going to have the Blood Moon. He's going to have potentially basic planes if he wants to. Also that swamp. So he's going to have access to all of his colors. Maybe he just takes a 2nd swamp there. So he could cast maybe a Liliana. Depends on what he values in the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that Lingering Souls, even if everything goes wrong, sooner or later you're going to end up discarding it into a Faithless Looting. You can flash it back even if you can't cast the front end of it with a Blood Moon in play.
Yeah, that makes sense. Marcio really struggling with that decision. He's going back and forth between search and looking to his hand. Just making sure he's not going to make a mistake in this spot.
It looks like right now he's erring towards a Blood Crypt, potentially because he wants to cast Spell this turn and wait a little bit on the Blood Moon itself. I guess a lot of this is he's seen exactly what's going on in Felipe's hand, and the things that are in Felipe's hand, Ulamog is not going to be coming down next turn, and if Thragtusk coming down, or Thragtusk coming down at some point anyway, so getting the Blood Moon in play this exact turn, not necessarily crucial, though that's certainly a judgment call that I'm going to wait until I see exactly what Marcio goes with here. He still likes the Blood Moon. Interested that he fetches the Sacred Foundry, given that he's casting Blood Moon anyway? Yeah,
I think he actually just wanted the 2nd red source for his Badland Ravelry hand.
But I mean, even if with his Marsh Flats he fetches a black source, like I guess he's always fetching a non-basic.
He just wants a non-basic. Yeah, that's basically it.
Okay, so here's the Tron. It is unfortunately 3 mountains right now.
Yeah,
but you know what? It's still a moral victory, if nothing else.
Yeah, the Tron deck can play to your Blood Moon. It just needs time.
Now, as things stand, Marcio here, his deck more naturally set up to be able to do good things with a Blood Moon in play than most opponents. It's not as if he's not impacted at all by it, but the extent to which that's the case is a little limited. Conveniently, Felipe here is able to continue to play spells. He gets to cast a Thragtusk here on turn 5. Not the end of the world, gains a little bit of life, has a big body in play that even when this is hit by this Terminate, he will get himself a Beast token.
Yeah, getting some value out of it. The 3/3 is not going to die to the Good Against command that Marcio has.
Goblin Rabblemaster the pick up there for Cavallo. While there's a Beast in play, not looking too exciting, but...
Okay, so now maybe Felipe is going to hold his Beast back to block, and then Marcio can finish it off the Good Against command. Next turn, of course.
Yes. That the buy box promo version of Goblin Rabblemaster for those of you that are wondering about the artwork. all of these Tron pieces. In a different world, there would be a lot of mana available to Felipe Badaro right now, but that's not the world he's living in. He's living under the shadow of a Blood Moon.
I mean, we know he has Ulamog, land, and I think Ugin in hand. If that's actually a Ugin, he's just another land and 2 turns away from casting it and resetting the board.
Resetting the board and making himself able to cast Ulamog the following turn.
You're right. So yeah, those life points for Interactors kind of blocker it's going to present here. It's going to be worth several draw steps for Felipe.
And I think that we might be about to see the play that you mentioned of a post-combat Kolaghan's Command. The question is, yeah, we are going to see a Manamorphose first here. Just offering a little bit more flexibility. Draw that card, potentially let your options change around a little bit.
Yeah, just keeping his options open. I don't even know what he's expecting to draw here. That was change his play, but I mean, if you want to cycle through it, why not do it right now anyways?
I mean, who doesn't like drawing cards, honestly? Let's face it. So this Kolaghan's Command, the 2 damage, the easy bit, makes forces a discard, and Ulamog goes away. What does that say about the quality of Felipe Badaro's hand? I guess that he really needs the land, he really needs the Ugin.
Okay, but he got something good too. I think it's Oblivion Stone, and it was just the turn after Marcio fired off Kolaghan's Command.
Yeah, the timing on this may have worked out perfectly here for Felipe Badaro. He didn't necessarily play toward it, it just kind of worked out that way. But you know what?
Right. Oh, and he chose not to play it. That's very surprising to me. Maybe he's afraid of the second Kolaghan's Command, but it just gives Marcio more time and gives Marcio the opportunity to top deck a discard spell, and guess what Marcio drew?
Surely not another Thoughtseize.
Just gonna wait and see.
Uh-oh. I mean, I guess both of these cards are very potent. I think that you have to take the Oblivion Stone, surely.
I mean, the Oblivion Stone is going to reset the board, but Ugin is the threat that's going to keep pressuring Marcio. It's a tough call for him.
I mean, I guess that my thinking is the Oblivion Stone is 100% working whenever Felipe needs it to. He does need to find a land to be able to get Ugin on board.
Yeah, right. So Marcio is going to figure out, okay, so he goes with the Ugin. He thinks he can live with the fact that Oblivion Stone is going to kill his Blood Moon and kill his board, but Felipe won't have a follow-up to just keep pressuring him. Maybe he made that decision based on the fact that he was going to cast a Battle and Reveler, so he's going to have a lot of options to keep playing the game after that stage.
Now, if that was a fetch land here, I guess that nothing's a fetch land right now.
Right.
Like, if it was a land that tapped for black right now, he did draw into another discard spell, which would have been able to take the Oblivion Stone. As things stand, though, all the lands in Marcio's hand right now function as mountains.
So he's not even choose to play that Faithless Ruining. This turn he's going to save that landing hand and use it as an extra discard outlet for the Faithless Ruining.
Okay, well, there was the additional land, which means that Marcio did make the right choice in terms of what to take here. It is inevitable that we're going to be facing... I mean, surely you can't wait around here on this Oblivion Stone.
Oh, no, wait, yeah.
And this is an attack for what? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 9 or so before any prowess
9
triggers?
before trap triggers, yeah. I think Felipe, I mean, there's no reason to wait here at all, yeah.
He also, now has access to a ton more mana than he did previously.
Right, so again, he has that scary top deck at his disposal. And Marcio, I don't think he necessarily has a threat in hand, but he's going to see some cards with Faithless Looting.
Yeah, all these discard spells at this point do essentially nothing because Felipe is essentially going to flip each card off the top of his deck, put it into play if he can, and that could spell a very difficult time for Marcio Carvalho here.
So that one was a blank, but it found a second Faithless Looting, so you can try another shot at it.
Get rid of 2 discard spells that are no longer relevant, find another Faithless Looting, try and keep something going here. That fetch land does now work.
Right. So he's probably going to flash back the Faithless Looting he has in his graveyard instead of casting the one he has in his hand, which of course makes sense. The reason to play it otherwise would be if he had a use for his 2 mana. He just think it's maybe he believes it's unlikely he's going to find anything that he can use that mana for.
I mean, a lot of velocity here in what Marcio Cavallo is doing, but on raw power level, right now, it's the Tron deck that has everything to play for.
Yeah, Marcio is playing Faithless Lootings into Faithless Lootings, and Felipe can basically win the game with a good top deck, which has plenty at his disposal.
This might be the time for Emrakul, right?
Oh yeah, that would be a good time for it.
All right. No pressure here, Felipe. Big cards off the top, please. If it's a big card, he's a very disciplined fellow.
All right,
it's a pretty big card. That's a Khan, and he's definitely not being coy about how his Sanctum Ugin works out this time.
I mean, anything he chooses here is going to be good. Road Breaker that he has selected on top there is the Resilient Threat. Walking Ballista is going to help him close the game a little bit faster. Yeah, he went with the Road Breaker.
A little thumbs up there from Marcio. I'm not sure how happy Marcio really was about that line of play.
So he's looking to potentially kill 2 lands from Marcio this turn to really limit his options to come back into this game. Yeah, it's going for the land restriction plan.
Yeah, cut off all of the red mana. And of course, Khan's still in play with the potential to eat another land soon enough. There is a mountain in hand for Marcio, so he's not completely out of things here. But Khan in play, World Breaker in play. I mean, World Breaker on its own, like, also does attack, not just the uncounterable way of exiling non-creature permanents.
Yeah, Marcio's going to keep playing to it with no resources at his disposal.
Gets rid of a card from Marcio's hand here. Big old swings. Suddenly it looks like these two players playing very different games of Magic indeed. Ancient Stirrings. I mean, there's got to be something good that you can find. 5 cards. Any colorless card is going to work out all right. I mean, this Relic of Progenitus, it cuts off all of those copies of Faithless Looting remaining in the graveyard.
Yeah, even for a miss, it's still a good miss.
Yeah, you get to draw a card off it as well.
Right.
Molten Rain that can't get cast. Marcio picks up his cards. We're going to be going to a game 3.
Right, so I thought Marcio was going to lose that first game. He ended up winning. I thought he was going to win this game. He ended up losing. So who knows what's going to happen to game 3.
You know what? It's your first day as a pundit. I'll let you have this one off. Right. I think it's going just fine. We got the score right. It's just the details that have been a little wonky. So we're going into game 3. It's Marcio on the play. We know that he has access to a whole bunch of discard spells. He's got those Blood Moons. He's got Molten Rain. We saw that. Are we going to see Marcio walking away with this game 3, or is it going to be Felipe?
Yeah, we can see Marcio. We saw his sideboard options. Goblin Rebel Master puts a lot of pressure, and then Molten Rain keeps Felipe out of Tron. If he has both of those cards, I think Marcio's a favorite. So we see Molten Ring there. We don't see anything that he can cast on turns 1 and 2. Oh, there's Faithless Looting. Okay. So he's going to use the Faithless Looting to maybe find a 2-drop or find his Rebel Master or Blood
he's also got a Lingering Souls to discard to this
perfect.
Faithless Looting. So no complaints from him there, I would not imagine. Also Marcio playing with unglued basics, which is something I can get behind.
Okay, I usually just take the ones from the draft box.
Different strokes for different folks, eh?
Yeah, that's the Rebel Master.
Lingering Souls. Like the second discard, a little bit more complicated to figure out. It's not just pure value all over the place.
So it's a very aggressive start for Marcio. He's going to cast the Lingering Souls from his graveyard, add 2 points of power to the board. Then he's going to have the choice to either cast Molten Ring or Goblin Rebel Master, depends on how Felipe plays out his first turns. That's a lot of damage really fast while setting back Felipe on his Tron.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to be in a position of being able to cast Molten Rain the turn before your opponent is able to get their full Tron in place. I mean, there is already a mine and a tower in play with an expedition map.
Yeah, I think that certainly makes Marcio's decision to cast Molten Ring here absolutely justified.
Now, if you're casting Molten Rain, which land are you pointing at? I know there's a lot of mind games that go on between which lands people play first.
I think it's Urza's Tower. I don't know which of those is Urza's Tower because
Urza's Tower is the one on Felipe's right. That is the one that is being fetched, being hit here by the Molten Rain. And Felipe, in response, fetches up another copy of Urza's Tower. That makes total sense.
Yeah, maybe there's some deep psychology analysis you can do. You try to discard the one he plays first or the one he plays second. I don't see any difference personally. I just destroy the one that can tap from my
especially with an expedition map in play, go for the one that taps for 3 mana.
Right.
Straightforward stuff. I mean, as things stand here, we've got the thing that I think that people often focus on disruption and forget about the notion that you still need to be winning the game. Marcio Carvalho on turn 2, he gets his spirits in play. On turn 3, he starts disrupting. Turn 3, still quick enough. This chromatic star getting cracked here by Felipe, who's trying to keep the wheels a moving here. Does have another chromatic sphere to play off it.
So Felipe with potentially turn 4 Tron, something he can access to next turn, but Marcio is going to attack for 3 this turn, and then he's going to attack for 8 next turn. And then we see he has some lightning bolts, or Faithful is looting to farm some more lightning bolts. So he can potentially close this game in 2 to 3 turns. That's so even if Felipe finds his Oblivion Stone, he's eager to reset the board. The damage will be made, and Marcio can finish it off with his burn spells potentially.
These Faithless Lootings, they've been quite kind to Marcio Carvalho in this third game. Again, finding a copy of Lingering Souls, one of the premium cards to discard to Faithless Looting. That it makes it sound bad that you've got a card that you kind of want to discard, but in this case, because of the flashback far easier to deal with than casting it from hand.
Yeah, Marcio certainly is going to add Rebel Master to the battlefield this turn.
A Goblin Rebel Master on an empty board, a big threat. It doesn't take too long to snowball out of control. And I think when it first came out, people maybe underestimated quite how much damage the little Goblin represents. That time long past at this point.
Yeah, remember when it cost 50 cents and everyone thought it was an unplayable card. Then it dominated Standard for a couple of years.
So swings for 3 here. Marcio Carvalho looking to make up for the one game that he dropped to Felipe Badaro here. Advanced to 6-1 with just a round to go here on Dame 1 at Grand Prix Sao Paulo.
So Marcio's getting... Oh, Pyroclasm! Huge play for Felipe.
That's exactly what Felipe needed to get back in this game. Deal with all of the threats in one fell swoop. Yes, there's another copy of Lingering Souls in the graveyard, but an Ancient Stirrings here means that he may be able to still get his Tron on board at the right time. Season Urza's Power Plant. That will be enough to complete the Tron. This is a big turn for Felipe Badaro. We thought that he was in all sorts of trouble, and he was, but he's found a way out of the immediate trouble that he found himself in.
I mean, he was actually dead this turn because Marcio's going to attack for 8, and then he had 5 more points of burn in his hand. So that top deck Pyroclasm, wow. Great play by Felipe. We have a game here.
I mean, let us not mince our words. Felipe is still not in fantastic shape here, but all he needed to find was time, and that's exactly what he bought himself with that Pyroclasm.
Yeah, so Marcio now, he has to time his Balan Reveler perfectly. I think he maybe wants to cast Lightning Bolt plus Lingering Souls, and then cast his Reveler next turn. No, so he goes for the Reveler right away, so yeah, he has enough for it.
That does mean that he's throwing away Color Gun's command here, but getting the Reveler in play more important, and draws into a Blood Moon off that Bedlam Rever. Gigantic draw for Marcio Carvalho here.
Blood Moon plus Thoughtseize plus Rebel Master. That's exactly the 3 cards if he could choose from his deck to put in his hand, that would be the 3 cards.
So Wormcoil Engine from Felipe Badaro, that is a big play, but right now I don't know if it's going to be big enough.
Yeah.
10 to 16 in Marcio Carvalho's favor.
So I was kind of
Tron into Wormcoil Engine. Great play by Felipe.
2 in the morning at Dragon Con, and I come across this
So here is Sanctum Mavugin getting fetched up with Sylvan Scrying here.
I can't describe what magic has meant to my family. You took one of my sons that had no social life.
And now here comes Marcel Carvalho. He's got the earth and everything on in his hand. It's just a matter of what he wants to deploy first here.
Yeah, he has to deal with that Wormcoil engine. I imagine he's going to cast Blood Moon this turn, but he needs a plan for after that.
Well, if you're trying to form a plan, one good way of being able to ensure that is by casting Thoughtseize, finding out exactly what's in the grip on the other side of the table. Because if he sees here that there's maybe not quite so many scary cards, maybe there's a temptation to wait a little longer before you start playing Blood Moon. As things stand, there are a whole host of threats. I think the Blood Moon pan still holds up.
Yeah, so again he chose to take away Oblivion Stone so he can protect his Blood Moon that's going to plan to cast. That makes total sense. He's currently losing the race on board, so he's going to need to do something after that. But at least he's going to deny Felipe the option to cast in Roadbreaker next turn.
Yeah, on the face of things here, that Wormcoil engine still kind of a problem. The life gain on it means that this race certainly not a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, Marcio does have some outs. We saw Wear and Tear. We saw Kudogin's Command and potentially Terminate as well. Dreadbore.
This has been a really electric match. Very, very back and forth.
And many decisions involved too. Usually those matchups, the way they played out, they're much more straightforward. It has been a great game to watch.
Blood Moon, not game over, but certainly a card that prompts a big response. Wormcoil Engine cannot afford to not be attacking here. And what do we have post-combat? Well, Walking Ballista, while not a gigantic threat against Bedlam Reveler specifically, very good against a lot else of what Marcel Carvalho could deploy here.
Yeah, at a minimum, it's going to do with the Rebel Master if he wants to. But if he just stays on the board and keeps adding counters, and Marcia takes too long to deal with that Wormcoil engine, the Ballista is going to close the game.
The difference between going into day 2 at X1 and X2, or even potentially even X3, I guess. I mean, X3, you're going to have a rough old Sunday if you're making plans on playing in the top 8. X1, I think it's perfectly reasonable to be thinking about exactly that.
Absolutely. Going to determine how well those players are going to sleep tonight.
Marcio's been taking notes. I mean, this one of the great things about having access to so many discard spells. You do get to figure out what your opponent has going on. So here's first the Rabble Master, then a Bedlam Reveler, which just very effectively draws 3 cards.
So Marcio, he could have played the Bedlam Reveler, discarded the Rebel Master, and tried to use his 3 remaining mana on something else. He chose to add the Rebel Master to the board. But now Felipe, he can add a counter to the Ballista, use it to keep the Rebel Master, and Marcio's still going to have to jump block with his Reveler anyways.
So along comes a Goblin. Liliana of the Veil, if he can force that Walking Ballista off the battlefield, it's going to be a way of shrinking down the size of the threat that Wormcoil Engine represents. Yeah,
that's one way to do it.
Now if I'm Felipe here, the hit from Bedlam Reveler is an easy one. Is there a reason not to block the 1/1 Goblin?
No, I don't think so. Felipe, if he's familiar with the Mardu Pyromancer deck, which is the deck we have seen, he knows there's nothing he can do for 1 mana in that spot.
Or I guess nothing that's going to change the face of things. Like a Lightning Bolt would be good regardless.
Right, yeah, you're exactly right.
What comes next here from the Marcel Carvalho show?
Okay, so now Felipe. All right, he's gonna go for the Rebel Master. So since the Ballista blocked and he took 1 point of damage, Felipe can only choose to activate it once. So he targets the Rebel Master with it. Then Ballista dies. He doesn't have the option to shoot it a second time. So yeah, that was the reason why he shouldn't have blocked.
We found it.
Right.
Marcio knew all along.
Yeah, of course.
Felipe was in a similar spot to us, which meant that he was losing his Walking Ballista.
Yeah, Marcio was on top of things. That's why he's number 5 ranked player in the world.
Okay, so there's another discard spell here for Carvalho. He also has, functionally, I guess, another discard spell in Liliana, though because of the Blood Moon in play, he can only play one of the two.
Yeah, I think he goes for the Liliana here.
Starts things off with a Faithless Looting from the graveyard.
Yeah, okay.
In principle, this does mean that there's going to be something even more exciting this turn for Carvalho. Finds a Thoughtseize, so now he could play double discard spell and a Kolaghan's Command. That is, if anything, the most exciting of all of the discard options that he has available, in part because of nothing to do with the fact that it can force someone to discard a card.
Marcio found a way. He's going to kill that Wormcoil Engine. He's going to have a way to kill the token. He's going to make Felipe discard the card. And he has a lot of points of damage on the board right now.
Yeah, this has been a game where Marcio Carvalho's draws have been pretty exceptional.
Pretty exceptional. He did the plays that he was supposed to do. He took the right risks at the right time. And, you know, potentially with that block that Felipe made, which is a play like I didn't see as well, so I'm not going to hold it against him. Maybe if he kills the Rebel Master there, the game would be in a different situation. Maybe, or maybe not. I mean, Marcio has 2 removal spells, so the Rebel Master is just extra damage, but he's not going to decide the game by itself.
Okay, so Carvalho is still here deciding what he wants to be discarding off this Faithless Looting. Not a trivial decision, it must be said. So this is Marcio planning out his entire turn from here on, because while the Kolaghan's Command very powerful, if he's playing 2 spells this turn rather than 1, that's a lot of prowess triggers. I mean, Wormcoil Engine in the face of Goblin Rebel Master is kind of great because you have a really easy source of a lot of life gain.
Yeah, so it appears that I don't know what he's gonna do. He's really struggling with that decision. Yeah, so he's going to discard the discard spells. The fact that he has 6 manas and 2 cards that cost 3 mana in his hand, and if he wants to use the Kolaghan's Command to return a Goblin Rebel Master, he's still going to cast 2 spells next turn. So he's just really efficient use of his mana. He's adding a lot to the board, and he's clearly dealing with issue number 1, that is that Wormcoil Engine.
Yeah, I mean, once the Wormcoil Engine is 2 smaller worm tokens, not nearly as scary. Sure, the Death Touch one can trade with whatever it wants, but at the same time, the Lifelink one, only gaining 3 life rather than 6, a big deal, and 3/3 in the face of these Bedlam Revelers, not really the size you want to be.
Yeah, he's gonna block for sure everything here. So, the Rebel Master is 3. Each of the Revelers is 5. And Felipe is at 11. Yeah, he can block the Goblin token with the lifelink to gain life, and the Death Toucher, one of the Revelers, or he can just choose to trade with the Rebel Master with the lifelink as well.
I think I like this set of blocks. Maximizes your board for subsequent turns, gets rid of one of the troublesome Bedlam Revelers that are going to remain kind of a problem going forward. Though I guess that... What was the second mode that we saw in Kolaghan's Command there?
That's, I think he returned a Goblin Rebel Master from his graveyard to his hand.
Because double Rebel Master is where things get kind of scary going forward.
Yeah, he hasn't cast it yet. I imagine that's the option he's going to make. Oh, yeah, sorry, he did cast it.
Okay, Felipe, even though there's a Blood Moon in play, you've got a lot of mana. What do you want to do with it? Worldbreaker here. I mean, Marcio just sort of shows his board and says, yeah, take something.
He could take away the Blood Moon.
Not the end of the world, though it does open up a few extra lines to Marcio as well.
Yeah, now Marcio can debut spell with his Faithfully Saluting and Liliana. Of course, Felipe doesn't know about that, so of course taking the Blood Moon, if you're playing turn, that's your default play.
The Worm here, a little bit of life. Here is a Molten Rain. Given that there's a Sanctum of Ugin in play, it does have a pretty reasonable target here. The 2 damage, not irrelevant either.
Right, so Liliana is going to get rid of the Worldbreaker if Marcio wants to. Then Goblin Rebel Master is going to attack for 3. Going to make Goblins that attack for 1. And Molten Rain is going to do the remaining points of damage if you count the Prowess triggers.
I mean, if Liliana comes down, is the Worm not a better sacrifice here?
Oh yeah, of course, he doesn't have a way to kill the token.
So, breaking down Tron here. All of a sudden, back down to 6 mana. A token Goblin attacks. Worldbreaker says, not today, thanks.
Yeah.
Tight on life totals here. And the Tron piece that got picked up was not another tower. Notable that once you've blown up one Tron piece, blowing up another of the same is definitely where you want to be, because it means that the likelihood of there being more drawn that much lower. Here's a Sylvan Scrying though, and that will find another copy of Urza's Tower.
Okay.
What do you know is right on the bottom of the deck. That's nice and easy to search.
So anything that Felipe draws is also going to trigger the Sanctum he has in play.
I mean, a Walking Ballista here ends it.
Yeah.
We have enough mana that it's a straightforward burn to the head. If Felipe has it, he is playing it very cool indeed. We've seen some great games here. The Worldbreaker comes in, killing off the Rebel Master.
It's a forced block by Marcio.
Wear Tear the pickup. In this instance...
that's a card he would like to have had the previous turn.
Yeah, absolutely nothing that Wear Tear can meaningfully do on this battlefield. Though there are plenty of things that it could deal with as and when they come down in the next turn.
So time to for Faceless Looting. That would be a good time to draw Lightning Bolt.
I mean, there's been a lot of good Faithless Looting times for Marcio Carvalho in this match. Draws Inquisition of Kozilek and another Bedlam Reveler. Well,
that's another shot at Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, Bedlam Reveler with access to 1 remaining mana seems like the play here. Marcio double checks the number of spells in his graveyard. I can't believe that it's not enough that he's going to be able to cast this Bedlam Reveler for 2. He just confirms that to his opponent.
Sure.
All right, 3 cards off the top. Land, Inquisition of Kozilek.
Okay, so he has an attack for 5 this turn if he casts the Inquisition.
There is a Lingering Souls in the graveyard. That another spell that's able to trigger the Bedlam Reveler though, and also put threats on the battlefield. Now, while Worldbreaker does have reach, it also has a lot of other things to worry about right now.
Yeah, so Marcio presenting a kill for next turn.
Relic of Progenitus to pick up here.
That's a redraw.
There's this power plant. 1 mana to cast it, 1 mana to crack it. I mean, if that had been on the previous turn, then it would have been lovely. Get rid of all of those cards in the graveyard.
It's time to find something.
Dig, dig, dig. Ugin the Spirit Dragon.
It's going to be 1 mana short for Ugin, I think. 3, 5, 7. No, 8. Has it is Xaxis.
How do you like that?
Wow. Clear
Plays
away the blockers. He's going to attack Felito. So, Relic into Ancient Stirrings, into Ugin. into exactly 8 mana to win the game. Good play by Felipe.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that a lot of things had to line up neatly to make it work.
Roller coaster of a game.
Yeah, this has been fully back and forth, and it's one of those games that I sometimes refer to ones that like to watch back on, because this is exactly the kind of game that I would love to try and figure out if there were points of inflection where one player doing something slightly different could have altered the overall result. Okay. I don't think that there was much that Marcio could have done here.
So Battling Reveler actually has a converted mana cost of 8. So Yugen can't deal with that this turn. So Marcio's now going to have a chance to top deck his way into a victory. Oh, that's game.
Yeah, with the 2 Battling Revelers in play that you can't remove with the Yugen, that is enough.
Yeah, oh wow, I totally missed that. Battling Reveler doesn't die to Yugen with 6.
We have figured it out.
Right.
Marcio may well have been there a little bit before us. He already proved that at least once during that match. But what a match. My match of the day so far, I would say, in terms of how things have been going here on day 1 of Grand Prix Sao Paulo. Grand Prix Sao Paulo fast on day 1 coming to a close here. We've just got a single round left for you. That will be Paulo Vitor Damarosa alongside Riley Knight bringing you all of the action. It's possible that we might be able to bring you a tiny bit more Time Warp Magic. Not quite sure here, as we are well towards the end of our regulation time here. We had kind of a long one for our second match, even if our first match between our burn decks was comparatively quick. We hope that you've been enjoying things thus far, because right here it's been a blast, and we only have 1 round left. Do not go anywhere. Our last round of Magic from Sao Paulo for the day after these messages.
So Magic the Gathering Arena. We chose that word arena very particularly because an arena is a place where people gather, where people